Story number 1. Whispers of Salem Station. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in the heart of Boston, I was always skeptical of supernatural tales, dismissing them as nothing more than exaggerated stories meant to entertain or scare. But everything changed the night I took my first shift at the Salem police station. Salem, Massachusetts, a town steeped in history and infamous for its 1692 witch trials, always had an air of mystery about it. The police station itself was an old, imposing building that had stood for over a century, its stone facade weathered by countless winters and the passage of time. The locals often spoke of strange occurrences within its walls, but I brushed those stories aside as nothing more than urban legends. I was a fresh-faced recruit, eager to prove myself in my new role. The night shift was quiet, just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of the city outside. As I settled into my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to dance oddly in the corners of the room or the cold draft that snuck in through the old windows, despite the heating system being fully operational. Around midnight, the stillness was broken by a soft, rhythmic knocking. I glanced at the clock, 12:05 a.m. My heart skipped a beat. The station had been closed off to the public for decades, transformed into a holding area and administrative offices. No one should be able to enter or leave without authorization. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way towards the source of the sound. The knocking was coming from the old interrogation room, a place that had been sealed off years ago after a series of inexplicable disappearances. The heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar, a thin sliver of light escaping into the dim corridor. I approached cautiously, every step echoing loudly in the silent building. "Hello? Is someone there?" I called out, my voice wavering slightly. The knocking ceased abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. I pushed the door open further, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the room was cold, colder than the rest of the station, and the air felt thick with an unseen presence. My flashlight beam swept across the room, revealing old, dusty furniture and remnants of past interrogations, blankets draped over chairs, scattered papers, and a single, broken mirror on the wall. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness save for the beam of my flashlight. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady my nerves, reminding myself that it was probably just the wind or some old building quirks causing the noises. But then, I saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the room, its form barely discernible against the darkness. It was dressed in old-fashioned clothing, reminiscent of the late 17th century, with a high-collared coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The figure stood completely still, its presence both unsettling and tragic. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice stronger now, though my hands were shaking. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised a hand, pointing towards the broken mirror. I cautiously approached, every instinct telling me to turn back, but something compelled me forward. As I looked into the mirror, I saw not my reflection, but a scene from the past, men and women dressed in colonial attire, their faces contorted in fear and anguish, much like those who had been accused of witchcraft during the infamous trials. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and the whispers began. Soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to emanate from the very walls, growing louder and more urgent. The mirror showed images of people being led away, their protests silenced by unseen forces. I could feel their pain, their desperation, as if their souls were trapped within the glass. A chill ran down my spine as the shadowy figure began to move towards me, its steps silent but deliberate. I backed away, stumbling over my own feet, but the room seemed to shift around me, the walls closing in, the shadows lengthening. The whispers turned into agonized cries, filling the air with a sense of impending doom. "Leave now," the figure seemed to urge, its presence pressing down on me like a physical weight. But I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from the haunting scene in the mirror. The past and present collided in a terrifying fusion, the spirits of those wronged by history seeking justice, or perhaps vengeance. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, the glass splintering into a million tiny pieces that floated in the cold air before disappearing. The room plunged into darkness once more, the whispers fading into silence. I was alone again, but the feeling of being watched lingered, an oppressive presence that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I rushed to the door, fumbling with the latch, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but my cries were swallowed by the empty station. Desperation drove me to search the room, hoping to find another way out, but every door was locked, every window sealed tight. Just as I was about to lose hope, the shadowy figure reappeared, its form more defined now, eyes burning with a sorrowful intensity. It reached out a hand towards me, fingers elongated and twisted, as if trying to pull me into the very heart of the past horrors that plagued the room. "I can't let you go," it whispered, the sound like the rustling of dry leaves. "You have to help us." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the true nature of this apparition. These were the souls of those who had been wrongfully accused, their lives torn apart by fear and superstition. They were trapped in this station, forever reliving their darkest moments, unable to find peace. "I want to help," I replied, my voice cracking with emotion. "What can I do?" The figure pointed towards the wall, indicating a hidden door I hadn't noticed before. With trembling hands, I pressed against the wall, feeling it give way under my touch. The door swung open silently, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air grew colder as I peered into the depths below, the sound of whispers guiding me forward. "Follow the light," a voice echoed in my mind, the words carrying a weight of ancient wisdom. I took a deep breath, stepping into the staircase, Laura's worried voice calling after me. The stairs seemed to stretch endlessly, the whispers growing louder, more coherent as I descended. The passageway led to an underground chamber, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage. In the center stood an old wooden table, candles flickering weakly, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. On the table lay an old, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. I approached cautiously, the whispers now forming words I could understand. "To set us free, the truth must be revealed. Acknowledgement of our suffering and the darkness that binds us is the key to our salvation." I picked up the book, flipping through its pages, each entry detailing the injustices suffered by those accused of witchcraft, their pleas for mercy ignored by a society blinded by fear. The final entry was a desperate plea, urging anyone who found the book to uncover the truth and bring justice to the wronged souls. "I understand," I whispered, feeling a surge of determination. "I'll help you." As I read aloud the passages from the book, the candles burned brighter, the room filling with a radiant light that pushed back the shadows. The whispers transformed into voices of gratitude, the spirits acknowledging my efforts to set them free. The shadowy figures that once tormented me now surrounded me, their forms shifting into expressions of relief and peace. With each word spoken, the chains that bound their souls began to break, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the spirits found the closure they so desperately sought. The book glowed with a brilliant light, the final words sealing the ritual and ensuring that their suffering would no longer bind them to this haunted place. As the last candle flickered out, the chamber was filled with a serene silence, the spirits having finally found peace. I felt a sense of accomplishment and relief wash over me, knowing that I had played a part in their liberation. Returning to the main floor, the door that had once been locked was now open, the path to freedom clear and inviting. I rushed out of the interrogation room, the station no longer feeling like a place of fear, but rather a beacon of redemption. The first light of dawn began to break through the storm clouds, illuminating the snow-covered landscape outside. As I stepped out into the fresh morning air, Laura was waiting for me, her face etched with worry and relief. "Are you okay?" she asked, pulling me into a tight embrace. "I think so," I replied, the weight of the night's events slowly lifting. "We did it. We set them free." We packed up our gear, the once intimidating station now holding a sense of closure and peace. As we drove away, the morning sun casting a warm glow over Salem, I couldn't help but feel a deep connection to the town's haunted past and the spirits we had helped to liberate. But even as we left the station behind, the memory of that night lingered, a haunting reminder of the thin line between history and horror, and the enduring power of truth and justice. Salem, with its rich tapestry of legends and haunted histories, had revealed its darkest secrets to me, teaching me that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, seeking acknowledgement and resolution to finally find peace. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the story remains vivid in my mind. The whispers of Salem Station are now silent, the spirits at rest, but the lessons learned endure. Respecting the past, seeking the truth, and standing up against injustice are lessons that continue to guide me in my life. The haunted police station of Salem stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unyielding quest for redemption, a place where the shadows of history meet the light of understanding. And so, as I sit by the fireplace on quiet evenings, the snow falling softly outside, I am reminded of the night we faced the darkness within the walls of Salem Station and emerged stronger for it. The echoes of the past no longer haunt the old building, but their legacy lives on, a silent guardian ensuring that the mistakes of history are never forgotten and that the spirits of Salem find eternal peace. Story number 2. Whispers of the Mojave. The Mojave Desert stretches out before me, an endless expanse of sand and rock under the vast canopy of a starless night. My name is Officer Daniel Hayes, and tonight was supposed to be just another routine patrol. But the desert has a way of swallowing you whole, especially when the darkness hides more than just the absence of light. I had been assigned to the remote stretch of Highway 62, a desolate road that cuts through the heart of the Mojave. The area is infamous for its numerous disappearances, cases that remain unsolved and haunt the local police force like restless spirits. Most dismiss the stories as mere coincidences or the cruel tricks of the desert's harsh environment, but something about this place always felt different to me. The night was colder than usual, the chill biting through my uniform despite the layers I wore. My truck's heater was on full blast, but it barely made a dent against the pervasive cold that clung to the landscape. The sky was clear, with no stars to guide me, only the inky blackness that seemed to press in from all sides. The radio was quiet, just the occasional crackle and static from distant stations, leaving me with nothing but the hum of the engine and the rhythmic crunch of my tires on the gravel road. It was around 2 a.m. when I first saw the car. A beat-up sedan, headlights long since dead, parked awkwardly in the middle of the road. There were no signs of recent use, no tire tracks leading to or from it, no telltale signs of a struggle. Curiosity piqued, I decided to investigate. I parked a safe distance away, grabbed my flashlight, and approached the vehicle cautiously. The door was ajar, swinging slightly in the cold breeze that whispered through the desert night. As I stepped closer, a sense of unease settled over me. The interior was eerily silent, the air heavy with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic and off. I searched the car, finding nothing of interest until I noticed a leather-bound notebook lying on the passenger seat. It was old, the cover cracked and worn, pages yellowed with age. I flipped it open, the brittle pages crinkling under my touch. The handwriting was neat but frantic, the words scrawled in a hurried desperation. They were warnings, cryptic messages about them, entities that lived in the darkness, stalking those who dared to wander too far from the beaten path. The entries became more frantic as I read, detailing encounters with these shadowy figures, descriptions of eyes that glowed in the dark, and pleas for anyone who found the notebook to leave immediately. A chill ran down my spine as I absorbed the contents. The warnings matched the local lore, stories of lost souls and supernatural guardians that protected the secrets of the desert. I snapped the book shut, my mind racing with questions. What were these entities? And why was this man, whoever he was, trying to warn me? As if on cue, my flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. I cursed under my breath, trying to restart it, but the batteries seemed dead. The only light now was the faint glow of the moon reflecting off the snow-covered landscape. I heard a rustling sound, the soft crunch of footsteps approaching from the shadows beyond the reach of my truck's headlights. Heart-pounding, I strained my ears, trying to discern the source of the sound. It wasn't human, no, the steps were too deliberate, too measured. They moved with a silent grace, almost gliding over the snow. I backed away slowly, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. Then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. Tall and slender, clad in a long, flowing coat that seemed to merge with the night itself. Its face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, casting deep shadows that hid any hint of expression. The figure stopped just short of the truck, eyes, if they could be called that, gleaming with an unnatural light. "Leave this place," it intoned, the voice echoing in my mind rather than my ears. "You do not belong here." I took a step back, my mind racing to process what was happening. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaky despite my efforts to sound authoritative. The figure remained silent, its presence growing more oppressive. I felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing me towards the car, but my survival instincts kicked in. I need to go, I insisted, turning away and backing towards my truck. But as I reached for the door handle, another sound cut through the silence, a low, guttural growl that sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced back, only to see the figure start to dissolve into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. But before I could make sense of it all, the sound of footsteps resumed, closer this time, surrounding me from every direction. The whispers from the notebook echoed in my mind, blending with the sounds outside, pleas, curses, and voices lost to the desert's unforgiving embrace. Panic set in as the temperature seemed to drop further, the cold wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. The shadows lengthened, morphing into grotesque shapes that reached out with tendrils of darkness, attempting to ensnare me. I fumbled with my keys, finally managing to unlock the truck door, but the footsteps were relentless, their rhythm matching the rapid beat of my heart. I dove into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut and locking it with trembling hands. My breaths came in short, panicked gasps as I tried to steady myself. The radio crackled to life, the static momentarily drowning out the sounds of the desert night. I glanced at the meter, no signals, just white noise. Desperate, I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal either. I was utterly alone, trapped in the middle of nowhere with forces beyond my understanding closing in on me. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life, startling me. I jumped, momentarily disoriented, as the headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the figure once more. It stood at a distance, watching me with those empty, glowing eyes. A wave of fear washed over me, and without thinking, I floored the accelerator, the truck lurching forward into the night. The headlights swept over the landscape, the road ahead disappearing into the abyss of the desert. I tried to shake the feeling of being watched, but the sense of dread lingered, hanging heavy in the air like a thick fog. The drive back to the station was a blur of adrenaline and fear, each mile stretching out like an eternity as I navigated the winding roads with heightened caution. As dawn broke, the first light of day began to banish the shadows, revealing the desolate beauty of the Mojave. I parked the truck outside the station, my hands shaking as I tried to process the events of the night. Laura was waiting inside, worry etched on her face as she saw the terror in my eyes. "What happened?" she demanded, rushing to my side. I struggled to find the words, the images of the shadowy figure and the relentless footsteps playing in my mind. "I saw someone out there. I found a notebook with warnings about entities in the desert. Then, my flashlight died, and I saw them, something not human." She pulled me into a tight embrace, her presence a soothing balm against the lingering fear. "You're safe now. It's morning." But as we entered the station, the shadows of the night still clung to me, a constant reminder of the forces that lurk in the darkness of the Mojave. I couldn't shake the feeling that the entities were still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The notebook lay on my desk, a haunting relic of the night's terror, its pages filled with warnings that seemed to come alive in my mind. Days turned into weeks, but the memories of that night remained vivid, a specter that haunted my every waking moment. The cases of disappearances in the Mojave took on a new dimension, each one tinged with the possibility of supernatural involvement. I began to delve deeper into the history of the area, uncovering tales of lost souls and ancient curses that bound the desert in an eternal cycle of fear and mystery. One evening, as I sat alone in the station, the same soft knocking echoed through the building. My heart raced as I approached the source, the notebook clutched tightly in my hands. The knocking was coming from the old interrogation room, the one that had been sealed off after the unsolved disappearances years ago. Summoning every ounce of courage, I pushed open the door, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the room was cold, the air thick with an unseen presence. The remnants of the past lingered, dusty chairs, an old metal table, and the faint scent of mildew. I scanned the room, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, until it landed on a shadowy figure standing in the corner. It was the same old man from the desert, his form barely discernible against the darkness. "Why are you following me?" I demanded, my voice wavering. The figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing with that same unnatural light. "You must heed the warnings. The balance must be maintained. Do not let them escape." Before I could respond, the whispers filled the room once more, the voices of the lost intertwining with my own thoughts. I realized then that the entities were not just malevolent forces, they were bound by a duty, a purpose that transcended their existence. They sought to protect the secrets of the desert, ensuring that the cycle of fear and disappearance continued unabated. Determined to break the curse and free the trapped souls, I began to decipher the cryptic messages within the notebook. The warnings were not just pleas for help, they were instructions, a guide to understanding and ultimately overcoming the dark entities that haunted the Mojave. Each entry revealed more about the nature of these beings, their origins intertwined with the land's ancient history and the tragic events that had shaped it. As I delved deeper, I discovered that the only way to break the curse was through acknowledgement and understanding. The entities thrived on fear and ignorance, and by confronting them with knowledge and compassion, I could begin to dismantle their hold over the desert. It was a daunting task, but the thought of the lost souls finding peace gave me the strength to continue. One night, armed with the knowledge I had gathered, I returned to the spot where I had first encountered the shadowy figure. The moon had returned, casting a silvery light over the frozen landscape, the stars now visible and twinkling above. I felt a presence before I saw it, an oppressive weight that pressed down on me, the air thick with the same malevolent energy that had plagued me since that first night. "Entities of the Mojave," I called out, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped me. "I understand your pain. I acknowledge your suffering. Let us find peace together." The shadows around me began to swirl, the whispers growing louder as if responding to my words. The figure of the old man materialized once more, his eyes reflecting a sorrowful wisdom. "You seek to change the balance," he intoned, his voice resonating through the desert night. "But it requires more than understanding. It demands sacrifice." I felt a chill run down my spine, the weight of his words settling over me. "What must I do?" The old man pointed towards the center of the lake, the spot where the footprints had led me. "There lies the heart of the curse. You must confront the darkness within yourself, acknowledge the fear that binds you, and offer a gesture of true remorse." Taking a deep breath, I approached the edge of the lake, the water completely frozen over, reflecting the light of the moon like a mirror. I knelt by the ice, closing my eyes and focusing on the fear and doubt that had held me back for so long. I acknowledged the darkness within me, the insecurities and regrets that had fueled my skepticism and denial. With a heartfelt apology for disturbing the peace of the desert and the souls that lingered within it, I offered a symbolic gesture, a drop of my blood into the ice, mingling my essence with the land. As the blood seeped into the frozen surface, a warmth spread through the lake, the ice shimmering with a golden light that pierced the darkness. The shadows around me began to dissipate, the whispers transforming into a harmonious melody that filled the air with a sense of peace and release. The old man's figure faded, his presence now one of gratitude rather than menace. The curse was lifted. As I stood up, the oppressive weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. The desert felt different now, less foreboding, the secrets it held finally acknowledged and respected. The entities that had haunted the Mojave were no longer bound by fear and anger, their souls freed from the eternal cycle of torment. Driving back to the station the next morning, the sun rising over the horizon and casting a warm glow over the snow-covered landscape, I felt a sense of closure. The Mojave Desert, with its haunting beauty and dark history, had revealed its true nature, and I had played a part in bringing peace to its restless spirits. But the experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder of the thin line between the natural and the supernatural, and the importance of respect and understanding in the face of the unknown. The whispers of the Mojave would forever echo in my mind, a testament to the night when I faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. As I sit in my office at the Salem police station, the stories of the desert's haunting still whispered among the local lore. I know that some places hold secrets that are best left undisturbed. Yet, in confronting the supernatural forces that once threatened to consume me, I found a deeper connection to the land and the souls that linger within it. The Mojave Desert had taught me that fear can be overcome with knowledge and compassion, and that even in the most desolate places, the light of understanding can pierce through the darkness. The Stranger in the Woods became more than just a story. It was a lesson in courage, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit to seek truth and justice, even when faced with the unexplainable. And as the seasons change and the desert transforms under the weight of snow and sun, I carry with me the memories of that night, a silent promise to honor the spirits of the Mojave and ensure that their whispers never fade into silence again. Story number 3. Echoes in the underworld. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in Chicago, I was always a skeptic, grounded by the harsh realities of life on the streets and the unrelenting grind of police work. My name is Detective James Callahan, and my rational mind was about to be shattered by an investigation that delved into the darkest corners of both the city and my own psyche. It was a bitterly cold January night when the call came in. The dispatcher's voice was tight with urgency. "Detective Callahan, we've got reports of screams emanating from the old Prohibition-era tunnels beneath the city. Residents near the riverbank have heard them. Some say they've seen lights flickering in the darkness." The Chicago Underground, a sprawling network of tunnels and bunkers built during the Prohibition to hide bootleggers and evade the authorities, had been abandoned for decades. Over the years, it had become a place of urban legend and whispered fears, stories of lost souls and unsolved disappearances lingering in the collective memory of the city's residents. I grabbed my coat, holstered my service revolver, and headed to the location. The area near the riverbank was eerily quiet, the usual hum of the city dampened by the oppressive winter chill. Snowflakes danced in the dim streetlights, coating the abandoned buildings and forgotten streets in a pristine, yet foreboding blanket of white. As I approached the entrance to the tunnels, a sense of unease settled over me. The entrance was a nondescript metal grate, half buried in the snow, with graffiti and rusted bolts holding it shut. The screams, agonized, desperate, echoed from within, sending shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that fear was a luxury I couldn't afford in my line of work. I pulled out my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness as I knelt down to pry open the grate. The metal groaned in protest, but I forced it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward into the abyss. The screams were louder now, more intense, as if the very walls were crying out for help. "Detective Callahan," I muttered to myself, steeling my nerves. "Let's see what you're hiding." Descending the stairs, the air grew colder, the oppressive silence broken only by the distant sounds of dripping water and my own footsteps echoing against the damp stone walls. The flashlight's beam danced over remnants of a forgotten past, broken bottles, discarded bottles, and the remnants of old machinery that once fueled the illicit activities of the Prohibition era. Halfway down, I noticed the flickering lights mentioned in the reports. Old, bare bulbs hung from the ceiling, their filaments struggling to stay alive, casting erratic shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. I followed the sounds of the screams, the air growing thick with a sense of despair and sorrow that made every step heavier. The tunnels twisted and turned, the layout almost maze-like, designed to confuse and trap anyone who dared to enter. I reached a junction, the screams converging from all directions, creating a cacophony of agony that was almost unbearable. My flashlight flickered, threatening to die, but I pressed on, driven by a mixture of duty and a growing sense of dread. Then, I saw it, a figure standing in the center of the tunnel, bathed in the dim light. It was a man, dressed in tattered clothing reminiscent of the 1920s, his face pale and gaunt, eyes hollow with pain. He looked directly at me, his gaze piercing through the darkness. "Help us," he whispered, his voice cracking with despair. "Don't let us stay here." I took a cautious step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are you? What happened here?" He shook his head slowly, his expression one of eternal sorrow. "We were trapped during a raid. They came for us, took everything, now we can't leave. The tunnels hold us, bound by fear and loss." Before I could respond, the flashlight flickered violently and went out, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as the temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the frigid air. The screams intensified, surrounding me, echoing through the labyrinthine tunnels. I fumbled to turn the flashlight back on, but it was no use. The darkness was absolute, pressing in from all sides, suffocating me with its weight. I heard footsteps, unnatural, ethereal steps that seemed to glide rather than walk, moving around me, circling in the shadows. Whispers filled the air, voices overlapping in a haunting melody of sorrow and rage. "Leave now," they chanted, 1,000 voices merging into one. "Leave before it's too late." Desperate to escape, I turned to run, stumbling through the tunnels, the whispers and footsteps chasing me like phantoms. Every turn I took led me deeper into the maze, the screams and voices a constant reminder of the souls trapped within these walls. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the supernatural horrors unfolding around me, but logic offered no comfort in the face of such relentless terror. Suddenly, I tripped over something, sprawling onto the cold, hard ground. The flashlight clattered away, landing out of reach, its light flickering weakly before dying completely. I lay there, gasping for breath, the darkness closing in as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. From the shadows, the figure of the man reappeared, his form wavering like a mirage. "You must help us," he pleaded, reaching out a translucent hand. "Break the curse that binds us." Summoning every ounce of courage, I forced myself to sit up, pulling myself to my feet. The chill in the air seemed to intensify, the weight of the spirits pressing down on me. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The man's eyes glowed with a faint, otherworldly light. "Find the source of our torment. The altar, the forgotten ceremony. Only then can the cycle be broken, and we can finally rest." Before I could respond, the figure began to fade, the tunnels around me shifting and changing as if trying to protect their secrets. The whispers turned into a deafening roar, the screams of the trapped souls filling my mind with visions of their past horrors. I knew what I had to do, no matter the cost. I had to find the altar and end the suffering of these lost souls. I navigated the tunnels with a newfound determination, the memories of the man's plea guiding me through the labyrinth. The darkness seemed less oppressive now, the spirit's sorrow lending me strength. After what felt like hours, I found myself in a vast chamber, the centerpiece of which was an ancient stone altar, adorned with symbols and remnants of forgotten rituals. In the center of the altar lay a collection of objects, burned offerings, broken symbols, and a faded journal. The air was thick with a palpable sense of pain and loss, the spirit's anguish almost tangible. I approached the altar, my hands trembling as I reached for the journal. It was the key to understanding the curse that held these souls captive. Flipping through the brittle pages, I discovered that the tunnels had been used for more than just illicit activities during the Prohibition era. They had also been a place of dark rituals, attempts to commune with otherworldly forces, rituals that had gone horribly wrong, trapping the souls of those involved in eternal torment. The final entry was a desperate plea for redemption, a guide to performing a ritual that could release the trapped spirits and end the curse. Following the instructions meticulously, I began the ritual, chanting the ancient words inscribed in the journal. The chamber responded to my efforts, the air swirling with energy as the spirits of the tunnels began to stir. The altar glowed with a brilliant light, the symbols pulsating with power as the ritual reached its climax. The whispers grew louder, their voices now filled with hope and gratitude rather than despair. The man's spirit reappeared, his form more solid now, a sign that the ritual was working. "You're doing it," he said, his voice filled with relief. "You're freeing us." As the final words of the ritual left my lips, a wave of energy swept through the chamber, the spirits being lifted from their torment and carried away by the light. The altar shimmered, the darkness dissipating as the curse was finally broken. The screams and whispers faded, replaced by a profound silence that felt like a heavy breath being exhaled. The man's spirit gave me a nod of gratitude before fading into the light, his presence a reminder of the lives that had been lost and the suffering that had been endured. I stood alone in the chamber, the weight of what I had accomplished pressing down on me, but a sense of peace settling in the air. Exhausted but triumphant, I made my way back through the tunnels, the oppressive darkness now replaced by a calm serenity. The whispers were gone, the screams silenced, and the spirits of the tunnels had found their peace. As I emerged from the entrance, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, I felt a profound sense of relief and accomplishment wash over me. Back at the station, I reported my findings, the journal serving as evidence of the supernatural forces that had plagued the tunnels. The case was closed, the disappearances explained by the dark rituals and the cursed spirits that had been freed. But the experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder that even in a city as bustling and alive as Chicago, there are places where the past refuses to stay buried, where the echoes of history linger in the shadows. Years have passed since that harrowing night, but the memories remain vivid. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my office, I catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow, a whisper in the wind, that reminds me of the spirits I helped to free. The Chicago underground still holds its secrets, but I know that I played a part in uncovering the truth and bringing peace to those who were lost. The echoes in the underworld became more than just a case. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the lengths one man would go to protect others from the darkness that lurks beneath the surface. It taught me that sometimes the truth is stranger and far more terrifying than any legend, and that even in the face of overwhelming fear, courage and determination can illuminate the darkest of paths. As I sit by the window, watching the snow fall softly over the city, I can't help but feel a connection to the spirits of the tunnels. Their whispers now silent, but their stories forever etched in the annals of Chicago's haunted history. The echoes of that night continue to resonate within me, a constant reminder that some places hold onto their secrets tightly, and that the past has a way of reaching out to claim the present in ways we can scarcely comprehend. And so, the story of the Salem Station and the haunted tunnels beneath Chicago lives on, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the enduring power of redemption and closure in the face of eternal darkness. Story number 4. Silent Whispers. The humid air of New Orleans pressed against my skin as I navigated the narrow, cobblestone streets of the French Quarter. The city was alive with its usual nocturnal symphony, jazz music spilling from open doorways, the distant laughter of revelers, and the ever-present hum of cicadas. But beneath the vibrant facade lay a darker undercurrent, one that had drawn me into a case that would challenge everything I believed about reality. My name is Detective Michael Harris, and I had spent most of my career in Chicago, dealing with the concrete jungles and the gritty crimes they harbored. New Orleans was a different beast altogether, steeped in history, mystery, and legends that seemed to breathe life of their own. When I received the call about the murder at an old, decrepit mansion on Bourbon Street, I knew this was no ordinary case. The mansion, known locally as the Moreau House, had stood abandoned for decades. Its Victorian architecture, once a symbol of grandeur, was now marred by neglect and decay. The locals avoided it, whispering stories of curses and hauntings that kept even the bravest souls at bay. When the call came in, it was from a concerned neighbor who had heard screams echoing from within the walls late into the night. As I approached the Moreau house, the air grew thick with an unsettling stillness. The ornate iron gates were rusted shut, and the overgrown ivy clung desperately to the facade, obscuring the windows and doors. Flashing my badge, I was granted access by the uniformed officer on duty, his eyes darting nervously around the property. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of dust-covered rooms and shadowed corridors. The grand foyer, once magnificent, was now a tomb of broken furniture and shattered glass. The victim, a middle-aged man named Thomas Moreau, lay lifeless at the foot of the grand staircase, his eyes wide open in a frozen expression of terror. Surrounding him were strange symbols etched into the walls, intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. I knelt beside the body, noting the lack of obvious wounds. No signs of struggle, no weapon in sight. It was as if Thomas had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only these cryptic markings. My flashlight caught a glint of something metallic near his hand, a small, antique pocket watch, its face cracked but still ticking faintly. "Who found him?" I asked the officer, who shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. LeBlanc, his neighbor. She said she heard the screams and came running." I nodded, taking in the scene. The Moreau house was no stranger to whispers of the supernatural, but I had always dismissed them as mere superstition until now. As I began to document the crime scene, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was from the station, a message from my superior urging me to leave the investigation and focus on more pressing cases. "Sorry, but I need to see this for myself," I replied, ignoring the instructions. There was something about this place, something that screamed for attention, that demanded to be uncovered. As the night deepened, I decided to delve further into the house, hoping to find clues that would explain Thomas Moreau's sudden and mysterious death. The air grew colder as I moved through the mansion, the oppressive silence broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. Every step I took seemed to echo with an unseen presence, every shadow flickered with a life of its own. I reached a study at the end of a long hallway, the door ajar. Inside, the room was dominated by a large, antique desk covered in papers and books. As I sifted through the clutter, my flashlight caught something unusual, a series of audio tapes neatly stacked in a drawer. Intrigued, I retrieved one and played it on a portable recorder I always carried. The tape crackled to life, and I heard my own voice, faint and distorted. "If you're hearing this, it means something has gone terribly wrong. The symbols, the rituals, they're not just decorations. They hold power. Be careful. I froze, realizing that someone had recorded this warning, someone who had been in the house before me. The realization sent a chill down my spine. Who was recording these messages? And why were they warning me of the very things I was encountering? Determined to find answers, I returned to the crime scene. The symbols on the walls seemed to resonate with an otherworldly energy, their lines glowing faintly in the dim light. As I traced my fingers along the intricate patterns, the temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the icy air. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness as the power went out, leaving me in complete blackness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight, but it was too late. The darkness was suffocating, pressing in on all sides. I heard a soft whisper, barely audible, yet unmistakably clear. "Leave now." Heart pounding, I tried to steady my nerves. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice trembling. No response. Just the oppressive silence and the feeling of being watched. I felt a presence, something malevolent lurking in the shadows, waiting for me to make a wrong move. The whispers continued, growing louder and more insistent, their words blending into a haunting melody of fear. Desperate to escape, I stumbled through the darkness, guided only by the faint glow of my phone's screen. As I navigated the maze-like corridors, the whispers transformed into screams, echoing through the halls like the tormented cries of lost souls. The mansion seemed to come alive, the walls shifting and twisting, trapping me within its haunted embrace. Finally, I reached the grand staircase, the same place where Thomas Moreau had met his untimely end. But instead of the lifeless body, I found an old, ornate mirror, its surface covered in thick layers of dust. As I wiped away the grime, I saw not my reflection, but the ghostly apparition of Thomas Moreau, his eyes filled with sorrow and fear. "Help me," he whispered, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Free us." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the truth. Thomas Moreau and perhaps others were trapped within these walls, victims of some dark ritual gone wrong. The symbols were not just decorations, but a gateway to another realm, a place where the spirits of the damned were bound, unable to find peace. Determined to help, I began to study the symbols, searching for a way to break the curse that held them captive. Hours turned into days as I pored over ancient texts and deciphered the intricate patterns. Each discovery brought me closer to understanding the dark forces at play, but also deeper into the mansion's malevolent grip. One night, as I was about to give up hope, I found the key, a hidden compartment in the study containing a tome of dark rituals and the instructions to perform a counter-ritual. The ritual required immense courage and a willingness to confront the very forces that sought to keep the spirits trapped. As I prepared to perform the counter-ritual, the mansion descended into chaos. The walls trembled, the symbols on the floors pulsated with dark energy, and the spirits of the damned rose from their prisons, their wails filling the air with a cacophony of despair. The air was thick with the scent of brimstone and decay, the temperature dropping to an unbearable cold. Clutching the tome, I began the incantation, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped me. The symbols glowed brighter, responding to my words, the dark energy swirling around me like a storm. The spirits advanced, their eyes burning with hatred and sorrow, trying to stop me from completing the ritual. "Don't do it," a voice pleaded, and I turned to see Thomas Moreau standing beside me, his spectral form wavering. It's not too late to turn back. But I couldn't. The lives of those trapped depended on me, and I couldn't abandon them to their eternal suffering. I continued to chant, the power of the tome guiding me through the darkness. The spirits clawed at me, their cries turning into screams of agony, but I pressed on, determined to break the curse. With the final words of the incantation, a blinding light enveloped the room, pushing back the darkness and dispelling the malevolent energy. The spirits let out a collective sigh of relief, their forms dissolving into the light as they were finally freed from their torment. The symbols on the walls faded, their power broken, and the mansion returned to its eerie silence. Exhausted but triumphant, I collapsed to the floor, the weight of what I had accomplished sinking in. The Moreau house, once a place of fear and darkness, now held a sense of peace and closure. Thomas Moreau's spirit lingered for a moment, a grateful smile on his ghostly face before fading away completely. As the first rays of dawn broke through the windows, I knew my time in the mansion was over. I gathered my belongings, leaving the haunted house behind, but the experience left an indelible mark on me. The city of New Orleans, with its rich tapestry of history and mystery, had revealed a side of itself that I could never have imagined, one where the lines between the living and the dead were blurred, and where courage and determination could break even the darkest of curses. Driving away from the Moreau house, the sun rising over the horizon, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The whispers of the past had been silenced, and the spirits had found their rest. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but feel their presence still lingering, a reminder that some mysteries remain, etched into the very fabric of the city. The case of the Moreau house remains officially unsolved, classified as a closed investigation by my department. But I know the truth, what we encountered was far beyond the realm of human understanding. New Orleans, with its haunted history and mystical allure, continues to hold secrets that defy explanation, waiting for the next brave soul to uncover them. And so, as I sit in my office, the memories of that night replaying in my mind, I am reminded that some cases never truly end. They echo through the corridors of time, whispering their silent pleas for justice and peace. The Moreau house stands as a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the lengths we will go to confront the darkness that lies hidden within the shadows of history. Story number 5. The Midnight Knock. The Appalachians have a way of seeping into your bones, of whispering secrets through the rustling leaves and the howling winds. My name is Officer Tom Reynolds, and for the past 5 years, I've patrolled the winding roads and dense forests of West Virginia's mountains. Most nights are uneventful, a monotonous rhythm of routine checks and occasional disturbances. But this night was different. It was a bitterly cold December evening, the kind that made your breath visible and your fingers numb. The small police station I worked at, nestled on the outskirts of Hollow Creek, was a relic from another time, wooden beams creaking under the weight of years, the scent of old paper and lingering smoke from the hearth. Hollow Creek wasn't a bustling town, it was a place where everyone knew each other, and stories, especially the eerie ones, were part of the fabric of our community. I was finishing up my paperwork when the clock struck midnight. The station was quiet, the only sounds being the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the occasional hoot of an owl outside. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my cramped muscles, when a sudden, rhythmic knocking echoed through the building. It was steady, deliberate, coming from the main entrance. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady despite the chill that ran down my spine. Silence answered me. I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously approached the door, each step amplified by the empty space around me. The knocking had stopped. My mind raced. Could it be an animal, a prankster, or something else entirely? Hollow Creek had its fair share of odd tales, but I always dismissed them as superstition. I peered through the peephole, half expecting to see a shadowy figure or a stray animal. But there was nothing, just the dark, cold night and the snow that had begun to fall gently outside. Shrugging it off, I turned to head back, when the knocking resumed, louder this time, more urgent. I felt a pang of unease. "This isn't funny," I muttered to myself, taking another step towards the door. As I reached for the handle, my phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. It was the dispatcher, her voice tense. "Reynolds, we have an emergency call from an abandoned house in the woods near Pine Hollow. They're reporting strange noises and seeing lights. You need to check it out." I glanced at my watch, 12:15 a.m. No one should be out there at this hour, especially not in the desolate stretches of the Appalachians. "I'm on my way," I replied, already grabbing my coat and badge. The drive to Pine Hollow was tense, the road barely visible under the heavy snowfall. The GPS led me to a secluded area where the remnants of an old house stood, its windows shattered, walls covered in ivy, and the porch sagging under the weight of years of neglect. The reports mentioned strange noises and lights, but nothing concrete. Still, my instincts told me something was off. As I approached the house, the snow seemed to absorb the light, creating an almost ethereal glow around the structure. I parked my patrol car a safe distance away and made my way towards the entrance, flashlight in hand. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of my boots on the snow-covered ground. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight, and the remnants of old furniture lay scattered across the floor. I called out, "Is anyone here?" "Police," but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. I decided to explore further, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Each room I entered seemed to hold its own story of decay and abandonment. It was then that I noticed the strange symbols etched into the walls, intricate patterns that seemed almost ritualistic, their meaning lost to time. My pulse quickened as I tried to make sense of them, feeling a sense of unease settle over me. Suddenly, a faint sound reached my ears, a soft, pleading whisper that seemed to emanate from the very walls. "Help us!" The voice was distant, almost melancholic, and it sent a shiver down my spine. I followed the sound, moving deeper into the house, until I reached what appeared to be a study. On the desk lay an old, leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed and fragile. Curiosity overcame my apprehension as I picked up the notebook, flipping through its pages. The entries were cryptic, filled with warnings about them, shadowy entities that thrived in the darkness, feeding off fear and despair. One entry stood out, dated decades ago, written in hurried, desperate script. "They are watching. Do not let them take you. The symbols are the key. Perform the ritual before it's too late." A chill ran down my spine as I read the entry. The knocking from earlier echoed in my mind, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. I realized with dawning horror that the sounds and symbols were connected. Perhaps the entities had been trapped here, desperate to communicate, to be freed. I turned to leave, but as I did, the door slammed shut with a force that sent me sprawling to the ground. The lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced menacingly around the room. My flashlight began to malfunction, its beam wavering and dimming until it went out completely, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I fumbled to turn it back on, but it was no use. The room was engulfed in darkness, the temperature dropping even further. I felt an overwhelming presence, a weight pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. The whispers now formed a chorus of tormented souls, their voices blending into a cacophony of sorrow and fear. Suddenly, the floor beneath me gave way, and I found myself falling into a subterranean chamber, the darkness swallowing me whole. I landed with a thud, disoriented and in pain, my flashlight still dead. The chamber was vast, illuminated only by the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls. The symbols from the house were everywhere, glowing softly in the dim light. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, the same symbols etched into its surface, pulsating with an eerie energy. I approached it cautiously, the whispers now swirling around me, urging me to perform the ritual. The notebook had mentioned a ritual, perhaps it was the key to freeing the trapped souls and dispelling the entities. I knelt before the altar, opening the notebook to the torn page that detailed the ritual. The instructions were clear but required immense focus and willpower. I began to chant the incantation, my voice wavering at first but growing stronger with each repetition. The symbols on the altar responded, their glow intensifying as the energy in the chamber surged. As I continued the chant, the entities began to manifest, their forms shifting and contorting in the bioluminescent light. They surrounded me, their eyes hollow and filled with desperation. "Help us," they pleaded, their voices merging into a haunting melody that resonated deep within my soul. I pressed on, the ritual consuming me, binding my will to the ancient words. The energy from the altar flowed into me, a surge of power that threatened to overwhelm my senses. But I held firm, determined to free the trapped souls and end the curse that had plagued this place for so long. With the final words of the incantation, a blinding light erupted from the altar, pushing back the darkness and the entities. The chamber shook violently, the symbols fading as the energy dissipated. The whispers turned into sighs of relief, the spirits finally finding peace as they were released from their eternal torment. I stood up, exhausted but victorious, the chamber now calm and silent. The light began to fade, and I felt myself being lifted from the underground chamber, rising back into the main house. The door to the study swung open, and I found myself standing in the same room where it all began, the knocking now a distant memory. I rushed out of the house, the first rays of dawn breaking through the clouds and illuminating the snow-covered landscape. The symbols were gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and closure. The house no longer felt haunted, the spirits finally at rest. As I drove back to the station, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a tranquil silence that felt almost sacred. The nightmare was over, but the experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder of the thin line between the natural and the supernatural, and the power of determination and courage in the face of the unknown. Back at the station, I filed the case as closed, the evidence pointing to an otherworldly presence that had been trapped within the house for decades. The townsfolk remained oblivious to the horrors that had transpired, their lives continuing as if nothing had happened. But I knew the truth, the haunting memories etched into my mind serving as a constant reminder of that fateful night. Years have passed since the midnight knock, but the story remains a cautionary tale among the officers of Hollow Creek. We speak of it in hushed tones, a shared experience that bonded us in ways words cannot describe. The Appalachians continue to hold their secrets, the legends of mysterious creatures and restless spirits lingering in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to uncover their dark truths. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right through the mountains, I catch a faint echo of the whispers that once filled the house, a reminder that some places never truly let you go. The midnight knock became more than just a case, it was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the lengths we will go to protect our loved ones, and the enduring power of courage in the face of unspeakable horror. And so, as I sit by the window on quiet winter nights, watching the snow fall softly over the mountains, I can't help but feel a connection to the spirits we freed, their whispers now silent but their stories forever etched in the annals of Hollow Creek's haunted history. The Appalachians, with their serene beauty and hidden dangers, remain a place where the past and present collide, where the echoes of the midnight knock continue to resonate, ensuring that the lessons learned are never forgotten.